Hey, it's Bill from the Bill Simmons podcast. FIFA World Cup 26 fans, listen up. As the official beer sponsor of the FIFA World Cup 26, Michelob Ultra is giving away $1 million worth of FIFA World Cup 26 tickets and prizes. Enter now at MichelobUltra.com/superior access/FIFA World Cup 26. Michelob Ultra FIFA World Cup 26 superior access. No purchase necessary. Open U.S. residents 21 plus begins on December 1st, 2025. Ends on July 31st, 2026. Multiple entry periods. Visit www.MichelobUltra.com/superior access/FIFA World Cup 26 for free entry deadlines, prizes, and details.
Sierra has all the best active and outdoor brands you need. From athletic stuff, like a full court pickup game, swish, to athlete-ish stuff, like a half-mile stroll. Get those steps in. And for morning hikes up the mountain trail, good pace. To nighttime ghost stories from the camping chair. What a twist. Whatever level of active, Sierra loves it all. Head to Sierra or Sierra.com for the brands you want at the prices that let you do it all. From athletic to athlete-ish, Sierra's got it.
Google is offering free AI training and tools to U.S. small businesses so they can innovate in ways both big and small. Built by Google experts, the Google AI Professional Certificate equips small businesses with practical AI skills. Through hands-on projects, they can start using AI to get more done and unlock new opportunities for their business. This is a new era of American innovation. Find out more at grow.google/business.
Hello and welcome to the Paddock and the Pavilion with me, Stephen Wallace. Today's episode, England in a State of Confusion, sees Roland Butcher return to the podcast to discuss the current state of England's men's Test team, following their 2-1 series defeat to New Zealand. The former England international gives his verdict on the future of head coach Brendon McCullum and shares his thoughts on the various options to succeed the retiring Ben Stokes as England's next Test captain. Along the way, Roland answers listeners' questions in another insightful discussion on the challenges facing England's Test side. Hello, Roland. Good to speak to you again. You were right in episode 425, called Dominate But Make Better Decisions. You said New Zealand would win the series 2-1, and they did.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. And once again, always a pleasure to be talking to you and on the show. I'm glad for once that my prediction came right, and not for English cricket, but at the same time, that was my feeling going into that series, that New Zealand would come out victorious, and so they did.
It could have been 3-0 if New Zealand had held their catches at Lord's, or is that being a bit harsh on England?
Well, listen, it could have gone, that first test could have gone either way. Obviously, New Zealand were pretty poor with their catching in the field. And that's pretty unusual because they're an exceptional fielding side and they pride themselves on fielding really well. So I was a little bit surprised at the number of catches that they dropped, and easy ones at that. At the same time, obviously, a good victory for England. Who knows what might have happened the second test, but, I always believed that New Zealand would get better as the series went on. They were handed, obviously, a lifeline by what transpired at the end of the first test.
Yeah, they were playing the England B team nearly in the second test.
Well, yeah, obviously, there were some enforced changes because of, we know exactly what happened, so there's no really point in going into what happened. But we know England were forced to make changes involuntarily, and it certainly helped New Zealand's cause, and they capitalised on that, got the momentum, and moved into the third test.
Before we talk about Ben Stokes, first question from Lena Moin Aziz, the first female Asian cricket commentator. She asks, what's the difference between New Zealand and England? She said mindset, skill set, or just poor decision-making at crucial times?
What's the difference? Well, I will try and make an analysis of the two sides and then let Lena draw her conclusion from my analysis. What I would say about New Zealand, if you look at the history of New Zealand cricket, even going back to when they didn't have a lot of great players, they were always a very functional team. And I say team. They've always worked as a team. They didn't have great players, but collectively, they always got the job done. This team now has a lot more skill than previous New Zealand teams of the past. They've got a lot of players now with a lot of international exposure in other forms of the game, playing all over the world. So they've got some quality players, both batting, bowling, and their fielding has always been pretty good. So that's at a different level as well. So, they're a pretty stable and steady outfit. I think they're quite loyal as well to the game. So, they're a formidable opponent. They're not flashy. They will not be the star team as, say, an Indian team. But, what you get is a team that is very professional, a team that will work very hard, a team that will push you to the limits, a team that will push themselves to the limit. And, I like the way they play cricket. Now, if we move to the England setup, I think the England team at the moment is one of confusion. Not sure what form of cricket they want to play. Obviously, the last few years, they've played a much more aggressive form, which, suited them to a point. It wasn't successful when they played the bigger teams. But the smaller teams, they steamrolled them with that aggressive manner. I think the confusion has intensified during the Ashes. I said on this program before, I believe that England made a huge mistake in Australia after the second Test match, where they abandoned that carefree attitude of playing the game and then tried to adapt to a much more conservative approach. Cannot happen in the middle of a series. I think England should have, and I said it before, England should have continued in Australia to be aggressive into the third Test. And I think that's where the confusion started, because after that, they got really, the press and everyone else were on their backs. And I think they really lost the plot at that point in time. And it's spilled over into this series against New Zealand, where they're not sure exactly how they want to play, whether they want to play aggressively or whether they want to try and play more conservatively. So when that happens, there is doubt. You get caught in the middle, and the result is what we have seen. I don't think they're a bad side, but what I would say at this moment in time, I think there is a degree of confusion, and unless they can sort out that confusion, then you'll get up and down results. But I think New Zealand are very much a team at the moment. If you look right through their side, the first six batters are excellent batters with good records in international cricket, very experienced as well. And England at the moment still trying to find their best combination.
Interesting points there. Let's move on to the topic of the conversation at the moment. Ben Stokes, were you shocked when he resigned as captain and retired from international cricket mid-game?
I'm not shocked that he's actually retired from international cricket. I am surprised it happened in the middle of a Test match, in the middle of a series where that particular Test was important to the outcome of the series. That has surprised me. I am not at all surprised that he has chosen to walk away from the game. I thought that it would happen at the end of this summer, not particularly this Test match, at the end of the summer. He has put a lot on the line. Obviously, he's worked really hard on his body to get it right. The funny thing is that he's retiring now when he's actually doing a lot more bowling than he's done for the last few years. So that's been a little bit surprising. But I guess, he has sat down and thought about his own game, the levels that he's accustomed to and he wants to, where the England are, where he believes perhaps they can go or they can't go. And he's probably decided that, I can't take them any further, and really I can't take myself any further. And he's decided to walk away. You've got to respect him for that. He's given a lot to England cricket. And at the end of the day, everyone has a finishing date. Some's earlier than others, but he's made a decision right now to call it a day.
You don't think there's more to it than it? Do you feel he's been let down by the ECB when he was dropped from the second test and he wasn't really back to return for the third?
Well, listen, I am not on the inside in terms of knowing exactly what went down on that night of the first test match. I think for the ECB to make the decision to drop their captain and talisman in the middle of a series, they will know the reasons why they have done that. If Ben Stokes was guilty, as I said, I really don't know. But if he was guilty, then the drop-in is justified. There's no question about that. Now, if he wasn't guilty, then perhaps not. But I have to take it on face value that I guess the investigation was done and the decision was made that he was guilty of whatever infraction there was, and the result of that infraction was the fact that he was dropped for the next test.
But after the omission from that second test, he didn't seem to get backed by the management during the sort of period between the first and the third.
When you say back, I mean, how can the management back him, or what should they back him about? I mean, they know Ben Stokes, they know the sort of person he is, they know he'll come back and he'll work as hard as he can to play. So I don't think he needed any backing. I think, listen, it was something that they just needed to forget. Okay, he didn't play the second test match, but he was coming back for the third. He was also coming back to the third test match with a little bit of form. He'd played for Durham. He'd got some runs, so that that was a good thing in between. I don't think they had to go to their way to back him in any way. He was just coming back to take the job on.
How high would you rate him as an England captain and as a England international cricketer?
Well, I haven't actually diagnosed his exact record as a test captain, and I'm sure you probably have and others have to, his win-loss ratio. But I think what he has done is, he certainly brought a freshness, to the English cricket. His own performances in winning vital games has been, crucial, the last 3 or 4 years. There's no question about that. We've seen him do it over and over again. Obviously not of late, but, he's been a very influential figure in the English game and for the last, 2 or 3 years. So I think he can walk away, feeling that, his time in the England team was a good one, and he added value to English cricket.
Over 7,000 test runs, 252 wickets, 122 test matches. He also played 114 ODIs. No one can forget Headingley 2019 and the World Cup win of the same year. You know this other person very well. Is he as good as Ian Botham, or was, in your opinion, Ian Botham a better player?
Well, listen, I think there were different types of players. I mean, I think in the case of Ian Botham, Ian Botham was, world-class bowler. His record shows that. Ian Botham was an excellent batter as well. The record of, he's had a good test career with a bat as well. Terrific catcher, fierce competitor. So, a very fine player. I think Ben Stokes has been different. I think his batting has been excellent for England. Obviously, in the bowling department, I don't think he was as good as Botham as a bowler. There's no question about that. And also not as good a fielder as Botham. But what I would say is, I think, to have both of them in the team, or one in the team and the other one waiting to get in, would be fantastic. I'm not gonna say who was better. They played in different eras, so they've had different challenges in both eras. I would say both of them have been very, very good all-rounders for England. And England have been very lucky to have had two players of that quality in their setup who have contributed significantly to the game in this country.
I'd like to ask you about the England management. I'm going to read out 3 questions. First one is from Jim Major at North Runcton Cricket Club, who was there when we did our live show, and he was at Trent Bridge on the 4th day, and he says the management and the retired captain included showed complete disrespect for the crowd, the cricketing public, and Test match cricket. And he said it was an embarrassment and a debacle and a surrender on the 4th day. Next question, all about the same, but I thought I'd get all the people who sent in questions in. I've got another one from Mark Campbell, who is the brother of Ryan Campbell, the coach at Durham. What is the future of Brendon McCullum? And then another one from Kubus Olivier from Kyiv in Ukraine. And he's saying that the top management, Rob Key and the coaching staff, need to start taking responsibility. And he says that England should go for Andy Flower.
Well, there's quite a lot there. I think Jim's question, it was Jim's statement because Jim was there. Obviously, I was not at Trent Bridge, so I didn't get to see that. But what I would say is that, England's problems occurred on the first day. When you're 300 or whatever without loss, and you're under severe pressure. So, that was the real problem. So they were always playing catch up the rest of the game. I think they would have fought as hard as they could in the circumstances, but too far behind the game. Once Conway and Latham had put that partnership together, really, I couldn't see England surviving this Test match once that partnership was on the board. So, me as a person who's involved in the game, I would not say they surrendered. I just think that they were beaten into submission on that first day by a very good team and a very good partnership. What was the other question?
The top management, Robert Key and the coaching staff need to take more responsibility. And Kubus is saying that England should now go back to Andy Flower.
Well, listen, I at the end of a series, or when you lose the series, suddenly everybody wants to get rid of whoever's in charge, and they've always got an idea as to who's the person gonna be able to come and get it right. But how do you know that person is gonna come and get it right? Andy Flower. I think Andy Flower really has had his time in English cricket. He's moved on, and I cannot see them really going back to Andy Flower because, it's a different time now. Andy's had his time there. I'm sure there's somebody else out there who's probably more suited to take on the challenge. Now, I think you've got to wait really till the end of the summer. There's a couple more series to come. Now, if success doesn't come in these next 2 series, I then obviously believe that, they will make the decision to look elsewhere. But I think it would be crazy at this point in the middle of a summer, to be ditching your staff to try and bring a new staff into play for 2 remaining series this summer, with everything else up in the air. That makes no sense. That's further confusion, and does not give the incumbent a fair opportunity to show what he can do. So, I believe they will stick with the group until the end of the summer and reevaluate after that.
England have now lost 7 of their last 9 Test matches, and the 2 wins have been in those shootouts at the MCG and Lords. If England did badly in these white ball matches against India, could that change opinions? Well,
I know at the moment they've got a coach that is doing all 3. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I do not believe in this modern era of cricket, particularly with the expansion of the shorter form, that one coach can do the job. I think that makes no sense whatsoever. There are different forms of the game, and there's a lot more now of the shorter form. And I don't think a coach can be in 2 or 3 places at the same time. So I've always believed in a separation. So at the end, as you said, I mean, if they have 2 poor white ball series this summer, then they could easily decide to then either dispense totally or, break up. The Test has its own coach, and then the white ball has its own coach. I don't feel that one person should be doing the job, and Brendon McCullum will feel the strain.
It must be hard going from a Test match and then 2 days later you're the coach of a white ball team.
Extremely hard, because, I mean, you going into a white ball series, you should be with that team preparing for the white ball series, and not preparing a day or 2 before the series start. So, it does not really give a coach a fair chance, because, when you're involved in a Test match and a Test series, that's a lot of responsibility and a lot of stress. Then to have in the back of your mind, I've got a white ball series coming up shortly, and my attention needs to be there as well. I think in this modern day that is crazy. It's not fair on the coach. It's not fair on the teams to have that situation. A couple of teams have opted for that, and my thoughts on similar situation with the West Indies as well. I think it is just too much for one person.
On that subject, bearing in mind that Harry Brook is the white ball captain, T20 and ODI captain, I've got a couple of questions on the future of the England captaincy. Richard Merriman asked, who will be the next England captain and why? And Kenny Hutchinson asked, could England appoint someone who's not in the team as captain, like Hasib Hamid?
Well, I'll answer that last one first. No. I don't. I think, first of all, you've got to get in the team. You've got to be good enough to get into the team before you start looking at captaincies. So I don't think we've got any captains in the county games right now who are the same caliber of a Mike Brearley. Mike Brearley was a decent batter as well. I think overshadowed by the quality of his captaincy, but I don't think there's anyone in our game at the moment like that. So, anyone who becomes the England captain will first and foremost, have to be someone who can get into the team. Now, where are the spaces available in the team? I think the captain will come from within this team. At this moment, I believe really you've only got 2 options really. Your 2 options are, you had Harry Brook as your vice captain before. If you are gonna groom someone as vice captain, unless you're gonna punish them for infractions, which is long gone now, obviously that person should be the person who gets the opportunity, because 2 months ago or 3 months ago you were thinking that this is the man, who is the number 2. So for me, it would make obvious sense, and maybe it's not so obvious, that Brook should be the first choice. The question is then, can he do all, and will he be capable of doing it? That I think those are the considerations for that. The other thing is to say, well, do we believe that someone like Jacob Bethel, taking into consideration a similar situation where South Africa appointed Graham Smith at a similar age years ago as their captain, do we believe that Bethel, not just as a player, but as somebody within the team who can, lead this team, And then maybe, your third option is, and it's the third option would be, to stick with your route to the end of the season and then reevaluate. I don't really believe they will go outside of those three.
You're listening to The Paddock and the Pavilion, the only podcast that covers horse racing and cricket with me, Stephen Wallace. If you're enjoying this episode, you can find it along with more than 400 others on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, or on our YouTube channel. Michael Vaughan was very critical of Harry Brook with his 21 runs off 9 balls in the fourth innings at Trent Bridge, saying he wasn't suitable as the next England captain.
Listen, Harry Brook is averaging over 50. So he can't be that bad a player. The best players in the world, and I said the very best players in the world, only succeed 3 times out of every 10 times. Is Harry Brook within that range? Most definitely. He's averaging over 50. I mean, does Michael Vaughan want him to score 100 every game? No player has ever done that. You'd have to go back to Don Bradman all those years ago. The modern player, the very best, 3 out of 10. The more moderate players, less than that. So Harry Brook is in the top echelon of those players. With Harry Brook, you've got to stick with what you've got. If you try to temper the way he plays, right, he will lose what he's got. I prefer to let him play the way he's playing. At times, he will get out stupidly, but I know that over time, that he will be successful, and you've got to accept that. There's no safety in no safe way of playing. Harry Brook, that's the way he plays, and he's been successful. Who is to say a man averaging over 50 in Test cricket is doing something wrong?
That does come back to your clarity of thought, which you've talked about previously.
Of course. I mean, listen, I said any attempt to rein him in will destroy what he has, what has got him to this point. I think he brings in a refreshing way to batting. Obviously sometimes, you can get upset when he gets out, but you got to take the rest of the smooth. At Lord's in that first Test match, right? Without Harry Brook's 50, what do you think would have happened in that Test match?
Well, England would have got bowled out for less than 100 in the first inning.
Absolutely, and would have got beaten. So people forget the influence that he had there. But obviously, he gets out quickly in the final Test match, and suddenly, everything's on his shoulders.
Jacob Bethel well. Is it too soon for him to be England captain? But you do see him as a future England captain.
Well, I do see him as a future England captain because, I've said to you before, Jacob Bethel all his life has been a captain. He's been leading the sides from juniors up, and he's always been an opening batsman as well. So I believe, he can do the job. The question is going to be, is the timing right for him? In the circumstances, what's going on? I think that's going to be the big focal point. Really, is do we burden him with this situation right now? I think at some point in time, he will do the job because I think he can do the job. But at the same time, you've got to think he's still very young in international cricket. He's still very young in first-class cricket. But, when you run out of options, and England are running out of options, it may be an option that might work out. But for me, Harry Brook should be the first choice.
So you're going for Harry Brook?
Yeah, well, yeah, because I have invested in him. I mean, if you don't go for Harry Brook, it means if I was the person making the decision before, that I got it wrong all along. That's an admission of getting it wrong. Why did I choose Harry Brook the last year or so as my deputy? If you've got him as your deputy, it's because you believe that he's the next one to step into the breach. What has changed since then? Situation that occurred in New Zealand, should that be something that should stop him from being captain when he has been punished for that already? No, you have to judge him on his cricket. You have to judge him on his ability to lead the team. Those, for me, should be the only things right now to judge him on.
And the England setup did replace the previous vice-captain, Ollie Pope, with Harry Brook.
Well, they did because, as I said, suddenly Pope was out the team. So you can't be out the team and still be, vice-captain or captain. So Pope obviously was on his way out. Harry Brook then became the obvious choice because the only other person at that point in time would have been Joe Root, and you've been there before. I'm not sure that Joe really would want that job on a long-term basis, having done it before. Stand in for a game or two, fine. But, you've got to find someone who you believe will certainly keep the reins for a little while.
Do you think the halfway house then is for Harry Brook to become Test match captain and relinquish some of his white ball responsibilities?
Well, listen, he might be able to do all. I would start off. You've got this summer. Get through this summer. I would make Brook captain and I'd make Bethel vice captain because he would now be my investment for the future. That would be the two that I would put together for the rest of the summer, and then see where it goes from there.
I'd just like to pick up on a few points during the series. How impressed were you by Ollie Robinson's return at Lord's?
Yeah, it's very impressive, but the conditions were perfect. We all saw what happened at Lord's. The pitch was not a good pitch for test match cricket. Fast medium bowlers who bowl good lining lengths were almost unplayable, and Ollie Robinson exploited the conditions perfectly. So it was a perfect return for him. Obviously he was sadly missed in the second test match. It would have been interesting to see if he had played, how he would have performed. But at Lord's, he was outstanding. Really created a lot of pressure for the New Zealand batters, and he was the architect really of that victory.
Lord's also saw the end of Kane Williamson's test match career. 110 test matches, 9,500 test runs and 33 hundreds.
A fantastic player, no question about that. One of the best of the modern era. An unsung hero. Never made any fuss about him. He was the sort of player that typical of New Zealand. You never hear anything off the field about him. A team man, world-class player. And a bit surprised when he actually announced his retirement after that first test match. Maybe he felt that, he wasn't really able to contribute anymore to the team's effort. But, his career was an outstanding one.
England destroyed by Matt Henry at the Oval. How impressed were you by him? He got 11 wickets in that match.
Didn't surprise me. If he was fully fit at Lord's, I think the outcome of that game could have been a different one as well. Matt Henry for the last couple of years has been New Zealand's number one bowler, outstanding bowler. So, him back to full fitness, doesn't surprise me. New Zealand, they need him desperately because, he really is the leader. And for the last couple of years, he's been outstanding.
Another player who made a difference for New Zealand was Blundell standing up to the stumps.
Yeah, listen, that's what New Zealand cricket is all about. It's very thoughtful. The they would have watched and seen the fact that Root and Brook, likes to advance down the pitch to the faster bowlers, particularly, when conditions are favourable to the bowlers. And, so it's okay thinking that this is something we need to do, but then you must be good enough to do it. And, Blundell was outstanding. I mean, he, first of all, by coming up behind the stumps, he anchored those two batters who wanted to get out at the ball into their crease. So that brought some hesitation into their play. And as a result of it, you saw the number of LBWs both Brook and Root had in the series. And that was because of that decision to Blundell to stand up. They got LBW on many occasions because under normal circumstances, with the keeper standing back, those balls would not have got them out LBW because most of the time they would have been advancing down the pitch and changing the length of the deliveries. Because of Blundell standing up, that was not possible. So that was good thinking by New Zealand for that to happen, particularly for those two players, to keep them, because, those two players can hurt you. They're very good at improvising, and New Zealand really came up with a master stroke there. Then you still need the type of bowlers, who are going to hit those areas. And, Nathan Smith, Arook, those guys just hit those areas consistently, which allow the keeper to do his job. So he did a fantastic job. But I think good planning by the Kiwis.
What did you make to the, I think, 4 England debutants during the series? Emilio Gay, Sonny Baker, Jordan Cox, and James Rue, the wicketkeeper.
Rue, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there were forced changes. Really difficult for all those players to perform. Obviously, Gay, luckily for him, I mean, he had more chance of being successful than the others because he played in the first test, where he got a half century, which would have meant that he would have played in the second test. So that would have given him a little bit of confidence. The other 3 players really came into the side when, because of what happened at the end of the first test. So they were really, they were thrown in at the deep end, and it was a case of hoping, that they'll do well. So it was very difficult for those 3. And I think Emilio Gay really is the only one that came out of the series as a new player, who perhaps looked to have a bit of a chance going forward.
You think Emilio Gay will be given the whole summer now? He got 139 runs, averaging 23 in the 3 tests.
Yeah, listen, he didn't pull trees up, but he scored a couple of half centuries in a very tough series against a very good side, a team that's really suited for English conditions with their bowlers. So he didn't do any worse than anyone else. So I think he deserves a chance to continue the summer. And I wouldn't say the whole summer because there are X amounts of test matches and every, it's game by game. So you see how the next game goes and then after that. So I think he should be given the opportunity to continue. It'll be much harder for the others. I think Rue, Cox and Sonny Baker. I think you'd probably have returning players coming back. I'm not sure what's the position with people like Potts and Cass and those guys. What's their injury situation? But I think once they're fit, they'll be around the team somewhere.
Before we end, we must mention Daryl Mitchell. I think he was hit on the body 17 times in his century, 100 not out, facing 241 balls in New Zealand's second innings.
Yeah, that's a typical Kiwis. That these guys are tough. They don't give up. They're mentally tough. You have to take the blows. If you're going to run away after the first blow, then you should not be in this game. You're in the wrong game. These guys, people like Mitchell, Nichols, and those guys are very, very tough competitors. You knock them down, and those guys get back up and keep fighting. And international cricket, if you're going to be a good international cricketer, it's not going to be a good day every day. They're going to be really tough days. And that was a tough day. And, Mitchell stood up, took his blows like a man, fought on, and he just didn't give it away. He just kept fighting and, fantastic innings. And at the end of the day, it really became a test match winning innings.
Finally, then, a mark out of 10 for New Zealand and England.
Right. Well, this, again, I think New Zealand, give them high mark. You can't give them full marks because, they lost that first test match. So New Zealand, I'll have to give them 8 out of 10 for that. England, for me, no more than 6. I think you got to give them some credit for winning the test match. But I think the rest of the series, still a lot of work to be done. I'd give them 6 out of 10. New Zealand 8 out of 10.
This episode is brought to you by Google Chrome. You think you know a browser, but Gemini and Chrome? That's new. It can help you with practically anything on the web, like restoring a vintage motorcycle from a 50-page restoration blog, or finally break down that long article you've had open for weeks. Gemini and Chrome is here for it. Ready to make anything online make sense? There's no place like Chrome. Check responses, setup required, compatibility and availability varies, 18+.
Turning to the West Indies, 629 runs, beating Sri Lanka in a test match by an innings.
Yeah, a fantastic performance, and congratulations to them. It's one, it's the first test match, they're 1 in 9. So, they're on a similar streak to England. I think an England-West Indies series now might be a good one because, they both got similar amount of losses. But, yeah, I mean, listen, a terrific performance to win that first test match. Does it mean they've turned the corner? I don't think so, because you don't turn the corner by just winning a test match. What they need to do now is to win a number of games, get some confidence, and then challenge, some of the stronger teams. I don't think Sri Lanka will lie down. I would not be at all surprised if Sri Lanka strike back in the next test. But, it was a good test for West Indies to win. Some good individual performances, and it should give them a lot of confidence.
A record partnership in Test history for the 6th wicket of over 400. What can you tell us about, I know about Roston Chase, but Jangu, who got 233? Yeah,
I mean, Jangu's a young player. I mean, he's, I think he scored an ODI 100 already as well. So, he has got talent. He's going to have tougher days to come, no doubt about it. He's suddenly, because he scored 200, doesn't make him a fantastic player. But, he's a player who came through the CCC university system. That's where he really got his opportunity before he played for Trinidad. He was more considered as a white ball player, really. But, he was first picked for West Indies in white ball cricket. He had a decent red ball series. So it's good for him to start that way. A lot of pressure is going to be on him now to maintain the sort of level of performance that people will be expecting of him. So it'll be interesting to see how he handles that. But, he's had a good test match and you should enjoy that.
Back to England. England are playing a 3-test series against Pakistan beginning on the 19th of August at Headingley, followed by test matches at Lords and Edgbaston. What's your prediction for that series?
I think England will win that series 2-1. I think Pakistan, they haven't played a lot of cricket. They'll be coming to these conditions. By the time they get acclimatized, there might be a couple of test matches down. I suspect that England will win the series.
So 2-1. I can't say, like I always used to say, Ben Stokes doesn't do draws, because it's not Ben Stokes, but you're confident it's going to be Harry Brook.
Yeah, I think Harry Brook will get the nod with Bethel as his deputy.
Changing sports, we're not far off believe it or not, the start of the Premier League. The fixtures are out. Who's going to win the Premier League 2027?
Well, listen, I think the usual suspects will be there. Obviously, Arsenal will be defending champions, but I think Manchester City will be, as they are, a very, very tough team to crack. Want to see how Liverpool shape up for this season in terms of their squad. But I would expect to see between Arsenal and Man City, they will be champions this year.
And your other team, Manchester United, how do you think they will fare?
Well, I think we're still in the rebuilding phase. It may be a little bit early for talk about, winning the championship. I think they'll be in the top four, but I can't see them actually winning it just yet. I think Arsenal right now, in pole position, no doubt they'll strengthen the squad. And, the experiences that they've had this last year, both in Champions League and actually winning the championship, that will give them a lot of self-belief going into the 2027 season. So I think they should be favourites, but, Man City, I think Man City will challenge.
So you haven't picked a winner yet?
Well, that's a good question. I would hope it's Arsenal. But listen, it's for me that league right now. I think it's very open. I don't think you don't have six outstanding teams that you can say. I think you've got three or four that can win it. I don't think the others really realistically have got much of a chance. So Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool, United. Don't look beyond those four.
Now you're off to Denmark. That's more commentary work?
Yeah, I'm going to Denmark next week for the ICC Men's T20 World Cup qualifier. So that's more commentary, yes. And looking forward to going back to Denmark. Many years ago, when I worked with the ICC as coach in Europe, Denmark was one of the countries I would have to visit and work with the national team. At the time, people like Amjad Khan was a young player in the team. I have touched base with him, so I'll catch up with him when I go back there. And also my good friend who I worked with during those days in Denmark, Ole Mortensen. I'll also catch up with him as well. So it would be good to go back and and hear really what's going on in Denmark and see some of the old friends and some of the old players that were in the team while I was around.
This must be qualifying for the 2028 Men's T20 World Cup. What other nations are in Denmark?
Oh boy, you're now putting me under a little pressure here off the top of my head here, but
get your phone out, yeah.
I will get my phone out and give you very quickly some of the other teams that are involved. You've got involved. There's Denmark, Estonia, Belgium, Gibraltar, Norway, Hungary, Romania, Serbia, Turkey, and I think that's it. I said Romania, yeah, that's it.
Certainly shows how the game of cricket has spread with the advent of 2020 cricket.
Yeah, yes, listen, now these affiliate countries are, getting the opportunity to perform on, as they say, on the big stage with the hope of, one or two of them making it all the way through to the World Cup, just like Italy did this last World Cup. So, it's a good opportunity for these countries. They really look forward to it, and I think Italy enjoyed themselves at this last World Cup, which is something that will spur these other teams on as well.
Well, I hope it goes well for you, Roland. Thank you again for being on the Paddock and the Pavilion. So it's Harry Brook for you and McCullum and Key to remain in post at least until the end of the summer. Yeah,
I think that's pretty much how it's going to be, and and I'm sure you've got your World Cup winner for the football.
Oh, I haven't asked you that because with this podcast, I'll probably get it out after England have played their game against Mexico. So I can put you on the spot now. Are England going to beat Mexico, and are England going to win the World Cup?
I think if they can get past this Mexico game, that will, put them in good light. This is perhaps going to be the hardest game for them in Mexico. I feel right now the momentum is going with Mexico. The challenges England will have in Mexico is, home fans. But the biggest problem is playing at altitude. That's going to be something that's going to be really sapping of their strength. They'll have to change the way they play for sure, because you can't be running around like a headless chicken at altitude when you have not used to that sort of situation. So everything says really that England are under a lot of pressure. I mean, they will have to be very, very smart and I think pretty lucky to get out of this one, because fate has dealt them a pretty rough hand in having to play in Mexico.
During your cricket career, did you play at altitude?
Yeah, I think it was Kenyan. I played in Kenya, which is at altitude. I quite like playing at altitude actually, because the air is a lot thinner up there. The ball travels quicker. In cricket, obviously, it's truer. I enjoyed playing at altitude. Football is different because, you've got guys who are running 13, 14, 15 kilometers in a game, and they're not jogging. So, when you're doing that at altitude, when the air is so thin and it's not something you're used to, that is really hard. So there are going to be some tired bodies and minds in that game. But the worst part really is going to be the recovery, because if you get over that game, you haven't got much time to recover before you go into the next one. So it's going to be really tough for England. If they get out of that, boy, they're on their way if they get out of that.
Yes, because I think if they do, it's Norway or Brazil in the quarterfinals.
Yeah, and soon after.
Thank you again, Roland, for being on the show, and we'll catch up again after the Pakistan series.
Yeah, Stephen, thank you very much. And still see my dark horse is still there. Morocco, they're still there and doing a good job.
Well, you got the Test series right against New Zealand, so we should be promoting Morocco for the World Cup.
Well, I mean, let's say a semi-final spot for Morocco.
They got to the semi-finals last time, so every chance.
We have the tech to get food delivered in 15 minutes, but we all have horror stories about buying tickets. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage. Get amazing tickets in just a few taps. Fees are included, so what you see is what you pay. And the Game Time guarantee means authentic tickets at the best price every time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to concerts, sports, comedy, and more with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.